It's just about trying to figure out how to move your life from a space of just kind of randomness to really coordinating as much as possible the things that are important to you.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Let's Rock podcast. I am your co-host, Philosophical.
And I'm your co-host, Jay Echo. What's good?
What's going on? What's going on, y'all? As you can see, man, we have a very, very special guest on today, Mr. Tim Massoquoi, therapist, mentor, host of the Mind Your Mental podcast with his co-host, Mal Davis. He is also a clinical director of the Ladipo group. Sorry. Also a former NFL player that's played with the Bucs, the Bills, and also the Dolphins. Welcome, man. Welcome. Thank you for coming on with us today.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. Excited to have this conversation, and it's an awesome day.
Yeah. Really appreciate it. You taking the time with us today. So we're gonna jump right into it. Into the first question here. What are some ways to build discipline? I know that we've spoken about that for a couple shows now, with different people, therapists, motivational speakers. So we just wanted to kind of continue that trend of building discipline. So let's speak on that. What are some ways we can build discipline, in your opinion?
So for me, I'm probably going to take the mental health approach, right? From that lens. So and when we're talking about establishing routines, is around routines and rituals, right? So like building discipline is establishing something that can be done consistently over time, right? To where, for example, like for years, when I played from college to the NFL, I have an internal body alarm now that wakes me up at 6 o'clock. Like I don't need an alarm clock at 6 o'clock but probably my alarm was actually 4:45, 4:30 when I played ball, because we had to be at the facility to get ready for practice by 6 o'clock for our first meeting at 7:30, 7:45. So like I internally wake up at 6 o'clock. And what do I do when I wake up at 6 o'clock? I don't just sit there and say, dang, I'm up at 6 o'clock. Now I have a workout routine in the morning because the day is packed. So I looked at the type of gym that I could get to, that had a 6 a.m. class. So I do a 6 a.m. class 3 days a week. And then the off days, I'll get up. I'll either, do some stuff at home physically, right? Or do some stretching or whatever it might be. So like I have a routine that's established now where this thing happens now. And if it doesn't happen, I don't feel good about it. I feel uncomfortable, right? Unless I'm on vacation or something else happens, but it's like, I need to do this thing because it's a part of my routine. So I have a discipline in that. And then the other thing I would say, is just about trying to figure out how to move your life from a space of just kind of randomness to really coordinating as much as possible the things that are important to you throughout your day, throughout your week, throughout your month, and so on and so forth, right? So really finding that at this hour, I'm going to do this. At that hour, I'm going to do that. So if you're talking about time management structure, there's that. Discipline from not doing things that you don't want to do, it's a part of that as well. Right. So the first thing I would say, maybe before even doing all that, start with trying to figure out who you want to do, what you want to do, and who you want to be, because then you can kind of structure everything in alignment with that, right? With that in mind. So if it's like, if I want to, staying in shape, let's say staying in shape. Staying in shape is all about coordinating your schedule and about putting things in place to allow you to do that. So it's about coordinating what you eat, and coordinating exercise and coordinating sleep and all of those things, right? So it's just really about being intentional and putting the structures in place. That's kind of like when you say discipline, how do you build discipline? I conceptualize that. I know the other component of discipline is kind of like doing things you were told to do as a child, right? You stick with it and that's kind of there. But I think as an adult, you have to figure out what that looks like for yourself. What are you really trying to accomplish? And then putting components in place to allow you to do that.
So let's start. That's a great answer. Great answer. So we've also been speaking on. Let's start from the beginning steps, right? Because I know for me is, I think the first step is consistency, right? But I think to the average person, and I've also thought about this myself, is that how do you build that consistency? What's the starting point? What's the, a point to where, there are sometimes you may do the same things that you're trying to build towards, but you're feeling like you're not getting there quick enough. So it's almost like you get to a point where it's like the consistency stops, right?
Yeah.
Well, you don't see
how do you keep from getting bored in that routine?
Well, not only bored, but just maybe like, let's say, for example, I'll give an example, right? I'm an artist. I like to do music, right? And to keep that consistency of constantly practicing, constantly getting better, you want to get up and write something every day, 16 bars, right? But what happens if you get up and it's like, man, I'm not feeling the topic. I'm not feeling the I don't have anything going on right now. I'm not thinking good. I got writer's block. How do you break through that? One. And two, as far as like, what do you say to people who don't know who they are, where they're going, right? Is it one of those things where they should just experiment? Should they just try? Because I do feel like, for me, it's like sometimes I'll go into a space where it's like I try to search, like what everybody else is doing, right? Should I try that? Should I not? So I think that's a very good point, to where people who are at the beginning, how do they kind of start with building that discipline slowly without getting frustrated, without feeling like I can't do this?
So I think in the beginning, it's about number one, reflecting on what you're trying to do.
Okay.
And then honestly, it's celebrating your wins, right? So a lot of times when we set out to do something, we're only thinking about the end. And the quote, begin with the end in mind. It's there, right? You begin and you have that thing. At the same time, there has to be a continual process of reflecting on what you've done. Because the more you reflect on what you've done, you've seen that, oh, I started here, but look where I am now, right? I'm not at my end goal, but the things that I have been doing this journey has been contributing to me getting to that end goal. So that kind of perspective is really important to keep. Because again, I think it's a portion of it is moving away from the microwave mindset, right? Instant gratification, instant satisfaction. That is a recipe for breaking your routine, right? When you're only thinking about, I should be here by now. And it's like, the images and social, all of those things, TV play into it, right? Reading stories of this person, I started here and look where I am now, right? That plays into it, because you're like, damn, I want that, right? That should be happening for me. But at the same time, everybody's journey is different. Everybody's journey is unique. Yeah. In your journey, though, what can be universal is celebrating what you've done, processing, not beating yourself up on what you haven't done, understanding what the barriers are. So there's an internal reflection that's continuously happening, whether it's journaling, whether it's like, looking at barriers, we're looking at your structure, right? So, so if that motivation comes one day, the worst thing that happens is, here's the process of why you will actually stop, why most people stop. I don't do the thing today. I've done the thing consistently for 2 weeks, whatever it might be. This one day, I'm not feeling it, right? You talk about writer's block. You talk about like the energy is not there. Then I go into a space of feeling guilty and bad about myself because I didn't do it. And then I start moving into, I'm not going to do it. I suck. And I start talking bad about myself. And then all of a sudden, that one day turns into 2 days, turns into 3 days. So we're not really looking at all the things we've done, the consistency we've had in whatever that thing is. We're looking at this one thing and we're letting that one day or that one kind of setback create the void. And the void is, I'm not going to do it no more because I haven't reached my goal. And I think that's what the issue is, right? So when you're starting, understanding that, have your goal in mind, right? Be reflective of what you want to do, but then also celebrating the wins along the journey, because that's what helps to motivate you. Because when you started a thing, and let's say you've gone through a week, let's say if it was like, I've gone through a week and I've had this routine, that's a week that you didn't have before you started, right?
Yeah,
And then you reflect on why that week worked, reflecting on what's going well. There's there's a therapeutic intervention we in counseling that we use. Is called solution focused brief therapy. And solution focused brief therapy, the philosophy of the foundation is, I'm only going to worry, not even worrying about the problem, worrying that's not on the table. I'm only focused on the solution. So I'm only focused on one of the components is what's working. I'm going to do more of that. What's not working, I'm going to do less of that. So when I look at my past week and what's worked, I'm going to do more of that, right? I might have fell it off, but I'm not worried about the fall off. I'm more focused on what the experience was when I was successful in doing it. What things was I doing to make that thing happen? And then I'm looking at that, say, okay, I'm going to duplicate that process. This one day didn't work. Cool. I'm going to get back onto what has been working. And I think that's how you can really start to string those wins. And then again, reflecting and affirming within what you've done, within the success of it.
Wow. Very, very good point. That's actually helped me a lot. But I've never really thought about just celebrating the small wins, because I view the as microwave thinking, as instant gratification, to say the big wins for me would be, man, I'm just writing every day, no writer's block and things like that. But really, I should be celebrating and just as a lesson to everybody, celebrating the little wins, right? Because that does create motivation, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes here. But go ahead, Jay. You had it.
Yeah, I'm definitely glad you brought it up, because it's actually something I struggle with on a regular basis. Like I'll keep pushing, and then I'll see a small win come through, and I'll be like, oh well, that's small. That's not worth celebrating. So just keep it pushing. Oh, that's not big enough. You gotta keep it pushing. And before you know it, like and we've discussed this before on here, I've become the person who doesn't really celebrate myself or anything that I accomplish. It's sort of just like, well, this isn't the big goal, so there's nothing to celebrate yet.
Yeah.
And it becomes a detriment, because you eventually either burn out or you lose motivation, because you're just sitting there like, yeah, I've done all this stuff, but I haven't enjoyed it at all. I haven't taken some time to smell the roses, so to speak. So it doesn't have as much meaning as it could. And part of it is because my goal was to turn the grind into my motivation, so to speak. Just like, oh, the fact that I am pushing is the thing that I'll celebrate, not the actual milestones. But like you were saying, it becomes a recipe for I haven't celebrated anything. So what's the point?
Yeah. So go ahead into you can go into the next question, Jay.
Oh, okay. So in talking about successes and accomplishing goals and everything like that, I think it's fair to say that you are a successful individual. You've done a lot, you've accomplished a lot, and you are continue to strive and achieve for specific things. But the things that you're striving for right now, I would say are the results of decisions you've made and and choices. So talk to us a little bit about the decision making to build more skills, to practice, to train, like that process, because you know, only I don't remember what the percentage is, but you were in the NFL. I think it's like a ridiculously low percentage of athletes make it into the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, what's the decision process like? What's the mindset that it takes to get from that, from, you know, oh, I like playing ball as a kid, to, you know, to college, to all right, I'm going to join the NFL. And how have you continued that now that you've moved into a different space?
So great question. So one of the things that the one of the interesting things that, you know, as an athlete, as a young athlete, which probably I would say has really impacted my discipline is so when you're anytime you're playing any type of sport, no matter what kind of like level you're on, there's a certain structure, right? There's practice structure, there's game structure, right? So when you're playing sports as you know, let's say you're middle school, there's a certain time you be at practice, there's a certain time, you know, you got games. And so you're coordinating, right? If you can, if possible, you know, short of like, you know, playground and just kind of going out. Cause that's why I start really got into sports. We would just play touch football, tackle football, like kind of like I grew up in Newark, New Jersey. So there was a plot of field. We play 7-on-7. We just play football, right? So we just played. And then so when I moved to Allentown as a kid, I started to play organized football. And I think that's one of the things where like I really start to understand organized and structure, was playing organized sports. So by first time, I would say maybe from 7th grade or 8th grade until I retired, my life has been built around structure, right? So everything I've done for 20 something years was around structure, place, time, activity, right? So a part of my decision making in that was sacrifice. As a ball player, there's certain things I couldn't do, right? I had to make sacrifices. And the other component was I was busy all year round. So I wasn't just playing football. I played football, I played basketball, I ran track. And then when I wasn't playing basketball season, I was playing AAU. So I was just kind of like athlete all year round. So my whole life became in my development years, because I think it's important that we understand developmental years too. I developed consistency and structure during my development years. That become a part of me. So anytime I'm not operating within that, it's weird. It's not comfortable. And the other component is I'm always trying to improve, right? So all those skills for me as an athlete that led to the penultimate, because honestly, I tell people this, I wasn't chasing the NFL before I got to college. My goal when I was in high school, my mom said, you know, when I got my first scholarship as a sophomore from Rutgers University. Shout out to Rutgers. First team gave me a scholarship offer, right? I didn't go, but it was pretty cool because I was from Jersey and it was like, oh crap, you know, Rutgers gave me a scholarship offer, right? in 10th grade. But throughout those years, it was about graduating. It was about going to college, because I would have been one of the few. My family's from Liberia, West Africa, migrated to the U.S. to escape the Civil War at the time, right?
Yeah.
So it was like we came here to get away from that, but there's, you know, quote unquote, the land of opportunities, America, you know. And I was born in New York, so the goal, I say all that to say, the goal was to graduate with a bachelor's degree. That was it. You got a scholarship, you're getting these offers. I expect you to go to school and graduate. And so it wasn't until I got to college and I seen my teammates start to like go to the NFL, like my freshman year, and this was the image, and I want to give the full context for the answer. The image was I got to college my freshman year. These seniors would go off. They were like, you know, get ready for the draft. They come back and they driving these crazy flashy cars, Bentley, BMWs, Lexus. I'm like, oh, like, and it's like, oh snap, they make some money. I'm like, oh, this might be the move. Like, so my sophomore year, I'm like, I might want to pursue this thing. You know, I started to play I got to start at Michigan and start to get some good time. So I'm like, oh, I might want to pursue this thing. And so at that point, it was like a decision was being made. I was making a decision like, I want to pursue this thing. So what does that mean? That means there had to be certain things I had to sacrifice. At Michigan, we weren't doing things everybody else did for the most part, right? We weren't like having a full college experience because we had a regimented schedule. And sacrifice has always been sacrifice and developing and getting better has been at the core of my values. So as an adult now, say all that to say, as an adult, I took all those skills with me. I'm able to make a decision to not do something that everybody else is doing, and I'm always trying to get better. So I'm in a PhD program called Organization Development and Change, and
Okay.
so every night, right, I work at the practice. I'm working virtually. I work with my team. Then I have a private practice. I see clients on the side, and then I'm writing every night. And because this is a PhD program, you got to write. So I'm writing every night, and that's my life. It's a structure, and I'm comfortable in it. It's very uncomfortable because I'm tired. I'm tired as that. But I'm comfortable in that structure because that's what I've been doing. I've just been grinding for 20-something years. So it's just normal to kind of work in this grinding space. The thing I've gotten better at is taking care of myself. Finding time to rest and recover. That's the thing that I was not good at, but I've incorporated that. So, so back to the talent was there, but I think as an athlete, and this is the one thing that people don't talk about, is the work ethic is something else. You gotta have a crazy, crazy strong work ethic because the talent rises so high, right? There's been so many talented as far as athlete people who have never touched the light of a professional sport, whether it's baseball, basketball, football, soccer, whatever it might be, because the work ethic wasn't there. It comes back to that work ethic. It comes to sacrifice, right? Understanding what you have to sacrifice, and then staying within that structure of just having a regiment. Going back to like, how do you build discipline? I think those two things really go together. Sorry for the long-winded.
No. It made me think of a question here. You mentioned you've seen a lot of players that had the talent, but didn't necessarily see the work ethic. Didn't see the work ethic. Do you kind of? I mean, we'll even call that potential.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like it's that's the true like nature of discovering who you are. Right? Work ethic plus talent, right? Not necessarily talent in sports, but talent in understanding and realizing who you want to be, where you want to go. Plus having that work ethic and motivation to stay on that course. I guess just an extra question for me is that, you're no longer playing football. So when it happens, right? It just depends on sometimes as a certain sport or as a certain thing where people stop that, right? That's all they have, right?
Yeah.
You got to kind of hit the reset button.
Yeah.
Or like, and rediscover, all right, where am I going, right? So how do you kind of keep that same growth motivation and growth mindset, right? Did you have to reset yourself? Did you have to, how was that for you? How do you kind of keep that same course?
So I'll start from my exact experience of, so when I got done playing, it wasn't intentional. Got done playing. My career did not go how I anticipated it, and I think it's important because I'll say this consistently for me. I didn't start like with that kid in that mindset of, oh, I'm going to the NFL, right? I wanted to play basketball. That was my main sport. I wanted to, if anything, I wanted to play basketball. They said I shaved my head, but I've been shaving my head since I was in high school. And because my idol was Shaq. Because Shaq lived in Newark. So I lived in Newark when Shaq had lived in Newark. If you look at his story, his documentary, they were stationed all over the place. One time he was in Newark, and I was there as a kid when he shot his first music. If you you should go look at his first music video. We in the background playing basketball. I was in the joint, you know what I mean? But yeah.
Wow.
So that's my connection. And so but I was this tall, skinny kid. He called me Young KG. So that was kind of like, I wanted to play basketball. So football, dreams of going to the NFL was never in the forefront of my mind. But then when I got there, I was all in, all chips in, full identity. This is who I am. This is who I want to be. This is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. 2 years into my career, devastating knee injury, setbacks like crazy. My career is done. And like
this was when you got to the NFL, correct?
This is when I got to the NFL.
Okay.
So
right.
beforehand, I didn't, like I said, in college, then I committed to it. And then when I got in there and I had this mindset of like, this is who I'm going to be, this is what I'm going to do.
Okay.
It was taken from me, right?
Okay.
Just taken from me. And so, yeah, that period was hard. That period was definitely hard in understanding that I didn't really engage in developing other components of my identity or what else I wanted to do. And so, yeah, I sunk into a depression. Really my mental health was, I was mentally going through things. And so I saw the therapist and I reflected on like, yeah, there was really not a lot of resources as far as like athletes who were going through that type of thing, who could having another therapist who had that experience. So I was like, I want to be a therapist for athletes because I had the experience of being an athlete and now I wanted the technical skills, right? So what does that mean? That means I had to go back to school and learn. And I had to take the same structure that helped me be a football player. I had to bring that to that space, to academia, to work, right? So for the longest time, it was okay. And I was used to working a regular job and then going to school at night, working and going to school, working and going to school. That was the grind, right? Working, going to school, and then going to my internship. A lot of people struggled with it. I was comfortable in it because I'm just used to grinding and kind of like having that structure of all of those years, taking those skills with me to be able to show up, be present, and do what has to be done. That has been with me. So it's kind of like part of my internal kind of composition to be able to work long hours, to be able to grind. And again, the thing that I've done better is taking care of myself, to have balance. But that's kind of always been there. And so the motivation and growth mindset does come from playing sports. Comes from, you got to keep getting better. Not for nothing, right? I saw like in the different spaces I worked in a lot of nonprofits. And one of the things that I noticed was nonprofits don't really have a strong business mindset as far as setting up a structure, business plan, and strategy. So I want to learn those skills to say, hey, y'all are doing great work, but you're burning your staff out, right? Because your pay structure is not strong, right? Your plan, your organization structure is not where it needs to be. And so I wanted to learn those skills. That's why I pursued this PhD, to learn those skills and go back and now consult and work with nonprofits to help do those things. So it's a need, and I'm like, all right, this is something I'm invested in. I want to do. So I gotta go learn these skills. And that's always going to be something that the really cool thing about my field is you got to keep learning. You can't stay stagnant as far as the therapist, because there's new modalities, there's new interventions, there's new approaches. So you got to stay up on it, because your approach can be out of date and you're not providing your clients what they really need if they need something new and different. So that's always going to be a part of me, probably until, I physically or mentally can't do it anymore, which is learn, but I'm always going to be trying to grow. It's just a growth mindset, kind of like has always been with me.
We sometimes live a life of directionless and pursuing randomness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of throughout we'll even say, your younger years had that structure in place, right?
Yeah.
So what do you say to our audience out there to like, what if you're lost?
Yeah.
Like you mentioned how sometimes when you suffered that injury, right? You went into depression mode, right? That's a sense of losing identity, becoming lost, becoming like, you don't know which way to go, right? So what do you say to people that kind of like that are at a place where it's like, I don't know where to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When that
Absolutely.
structure is taken away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because yeah. So what do you say to those people? How to regain that structure? Do you tell them, like, hey, there's always cliche quotes that we could tell people, but I think in today's world, you've got to kind of direct people. You gotta, you gotta. Those quotes used to say, "Hey, you can lead the horse to water, you can't make him drink." I think today's world, you got to give a blueprint on how to get people to drink that water. And I know I was kind of cliche, but what do you say to those people that are kind of, we'll call it structureless? You know what I mean? They had it before, and now it's gone.
Yeah, listless.
Yeah.
So I think I'll speak to the two, because I think the one thing you said was important was, and it got me thinking about people who never had that structure at all in their life. Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the people who have had that structure, that's a reflection thing, because the components of whatever that structure is, it's embedded in you, especially if it's become a part of your routine. So it's just really being reflective on what were the components of that structure, right? If it was a time structure, if it was a routine structure, that can be duplicated at any time. So whatever you may have lost, you can always replicate. That's what I do now. The structure I've replicated has been directly pulled from the spaces that I've been in, the different organizations that I worked in, the different teams that I played for. Just those skills have been coming with me, right? And I'm able to approach something because that's embedded. I kind of figure out my approach and my mode, and I think that's important. You got to know yourself. So I would say you got to start by knowing yourself. If you don't know about yourself, you can chase anything, and you kind of just be kind of all over the place. The work that I think that I was able to do when I did transition, working with a clinician, and one of the things that I really, really understood about myself, one class I had to do a 60-page self-assessment, self-analysis. So psychoanalytic work, you do a analysis of yourself. So I had to really go through, and I'm not suggesting this from nobody, right? But this was critical for me to really understanding myself and understanding my schemas, which are the different components of my personality and how I operate and show up in the world. So I did this analysis. I looked at my early years and the things that impacted my decision making, the things that emotionally impacted me and intellectually impacted me. I looked at my high school years. I looked at like the social structures that I was in, right? And then I looked at my college years. I looked at how I made decisions. And the one theme that was in all of those spaces for me was my connections to people and friends, right? Friends, like, for better or worse, drove a lot of my decision making because I was just doing what my friends did. And I realized that, and I was like, wow, like that was deep for me. Like, what are we doing? Boom. All right, we doing it. And it was like kind of like no reflection, no insight, right, into what I was doing. And so that helped me to really start to understand that I needed to define my own identity, right? So then I started to really look at what my identity was. And one of the things that came up for me was I like consistency. I like safety in the consistency of things in my life. And so then I started to construct consistency, which brought me safety. I'm not a risk taker. Like, I'm not going to be somebody who take risks, right? So I with my 30, if I was going to jump out of a plane, but I was too heavy. So I was like, glad it didn't work out. My 30th birthday, I was like, I'm going to what is it called?
Bungee jump or
whatever.
Skydive.
Skydive. Yeah, I'm glad it didn't work out because I was too heavy. All right. 250, like they have a weight limit. So I'm glad I didn't do that. But beyond that, I'm not a risk taker. And I became comfortable with that because then I had to deal with the other part of, you're not going to make the money like you did when you was in the league because you're not going out and doing some crazy business venture and things like that. And I felt with that guilt of like not being seen as like, that success, because that was where the depression identity came from, because all the success was built into being this pro football player, right? So then I was like, I got to be successful like that again in some other capacity. But that's not me. It's just not me who's trying to be seen. I'm not trying to be seen at all. And then I really have grown comfortable with somebody who plays the background and still can do what I need to do, but I'm not trying to be in the spotlight at all. Like I'm real comfortable in my skin. And that's important. That's important. And I hope for our listeners is like not everybody got to be in front of the camera. There's people who are behind the camera who are doing great things and living good lives. So we got to like, you know what I mean? Like this idea of being recognized and things like that, that comes from filling up who you are inside and how you feel about yourself, right? That's really important. And I think us, and I'll be specific, as men, as Black men, we got to do the work to fill our own cup up, right? Because we keep trying to get outside validation and trying to fill our cup up from the world, but our joint should be full, and anything outside of that should be extra in the surplus. Right. Because if I don't get that thing, I'm good regardless. And that's how I'm good with myself. I'm going to continue developing, but I don't need really no external validation from the world. So I'm good.
I'm glad you said that, because I feel like I've been battling with that, because I feel like, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just giving a different perspective of, I feel like sometimes each day I'm learning how to pour a little bit into my glass, right? Filling my cup up day by day, right? But there's a certain part of my brain, a certain corner in my brain, to where, and Jay can probably attest to this, so I'm pretty sure our audience can attest to this. Like, there's certain things within time frames that, like, if I don't get to this right away, I'm gonna miss out. So I feel like, and sometimes you got to be able to have the mindset to either ignore it or, come back to it, right? When you're ready. So I feel like sometimes it's important to keep filling your glass day by day, right? Developing new patterns, developing new routines, developing a structure. And to be honest, I'm learning that every day. Right? Developing new behaviors, developing new avenues, trying new things. Not necessarily, because to be honest, I'm a risk taker. I'm a risk taker, but taking risks without direction is failure, right? And I've failed a lot of times, right?
Yeah. But
at the same time, developing that direction, developing that structure, developing that I'm learning. I just learned yesterday, being still, being calm, understanding who you are, you know what I mean? And I'm starting to understand and realize, how can I just be still? You know what I mean? And not necessarily, I feel bad sometimes. And I was just talking to Jay about this the other day. I feel bad sometimes when I don't accomplish certain things, and I'm very quick to move on to something else, right? When I haven't finished what's going on right here, right? So that's one of the, and I wonder, and I'm interested to know what a lot of our audience feels about that, right? Feeling the lack of, just, you're missing out on something, feeling like, hey, if I don't move on to the next thing, I'm confused, right? I'm stuck. So I just want to kind of add on to that, if you're going through that, I feel you, because I was there, you know what I mean? But I tell you right now, just filling your glass up day by day, a little bit each day, developing that structure, developing that behavior, waking up with a different mindset, you know what I mean? Just developing different patterns than what you're going through now, just filling it up day by day. Go ahead, Jay.
I mean, what's it called? One of the other things that I want to highlight that you said is the thing about and Phil, you already touched on it, not the structure piece of it, but the sort of directionless
the risk taking
structure. No, not the risk taking, the structure without direction.
Yeah.
Because I would say Now, mind you, I'm nobody's NFL player. I'm nobody's PhD candidate right now. But
Yeah.
I would say, Tim, you and I have similar stories somewhat in that you are a first generation African born, parents were big on school. Parents were like, hey, no matter what you're doing, we want that diploma, we want that degree. And you know what, how you go about it will leave it up to you, so to speak, but these are still our expectations.
Yeah.
But then, but for me, so I know for me, like, and I'm getting comfortable with admitting this more and more every day. Like, personally, I did not expect to be here past my 30s, right? Like,
Yeah.
my expectation was that, oh, I'm probably not going to see 34, 35, 36. So, there's no point in me really striving for things. So I was sort of going through the motions, right? I had the structure in place, but if you asked me, hey, where exactly are you going? I couldn't tell you because there was no expectation for me. It was just like, all right, I'm probably going to hit this point and it's going to be a wrap for me. So there's no point in me setting a direction for myself. And as a result of that, I kept finding myself in positions where, like Phil said, there's structure without direction, and there was like just compounding failures, kept failing at the different things that I was trying. And then, ultimately I got to a certain point where it's like, all right, it looks like that expectation you had isn't finna happen. You're finna be here for a good long time. So are you going to set a goalpost? Are you going to pick a direction? Or are you just going to keep going through the motions? Are you going to start setting those benchmarks in place? Are you going to start setting that road? And when I finally did, it made things so much easier. Not easy in that, like, oh, it's all smooth sailing from here, but it made things easier in that I'm not looking everywhere else for the thing that fills me up. Like Tim, you said you're not a risk taker. I would say I'm the same way. I'm not really interested in, oh, let's spend all of my income for this new venture capitalist thing. I've tried it before, and again, it failed because I didn't have a direction, and I didn't realize that that's not what feeds me. That's not what fills my cup.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you guys pointed that out, because it's like, hey, you don't have to be all of these things, and it's good to look outside of you for examples and for things that'll help you set that internal guidepost. But ultimately, these are just examples. They shouldn't be the thing that you're reaching towards. They should just be
I want to add to that. I think that's important, right? Because and that's such an important point you made. Yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having kind of like examples of, if Phil, you're a musician, there's nothing wrong with like looking at certain musician styles and certain musicians approach and maybe their level of success. There's nothing wrong with having kind of like those like goals, right? There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I want to be like that. I think the better question is, why do I want to be like that? Right? That's always for me. Like if I'm gonna aspire to look at somebody as kind of like that standard, why? How does that connect to me? Right? Because if it connects to me because I want what they have and I want to be like that just because it looks good, I'm gonna set myself for real failure and disappointment. Right? Because that individual's journey is their journey. And my journey has to be my own journey. I can have that as a North Star for what it looks like and take components and maybe like, read a book or two for what that person said really helped and try to, duplicate a little bit of their process. But I also should always be working on my own process and kind of like how I make up my makeup, right? How do I engage? How do I do things? Because that's important. Because I will be very disappointed if I try to be exactly like, if I'm a therapist, I want to be exactly like this other therapist and I want to do everything they do, but there's components of who they are and their personality that's not in me. I'm going to fail. I'm going to fail. I could have some success, but me optimizing my full potential is not going to happen because I'm not doing the work to understand what makes me and what kind of like move do I make and kind of like customize. It's customization, right? So I think that's important what you're saying, Jay. Just like, it's again, when I say risk taking, exactly that. Like I'm comfortable with kind of, again, as a therapist, one of the things that's happening, just, there's a lot of recognition for mental health and recognition for Black therapists and Black male therapists. So there's all kinds of people all over. And I have those moments, Phil, where I see something on LinkedIn. I'm like, damn, I should be me. I have those moments. I'm not going to sit here and act like it's all sweet. I have envious and jealous moments. I'll call it what it is. I envy sometimes. I do.
Yes.
And it's because I'm not reflecting on where I am in my journey, right? I'm not reflecting that individual's journey and their opportunity is theirs, and mine will come, right? Mine will come as long as I'm doing the work. And when mine comes, I better be ready. I better be ready to execute. And that's what it is. And that's for me. And I fell back on that. It's like your time will come, right? Your time will come. Your moment's gonna come. And it's not, and to what you said earlier, Phil, it's not a fear of missing out type of situation too. Because as long as you're operating in what you're supposed to be operating in, the opportunities are gonna keep on coming back and finding you. They do. They do. I'm a testament to that. I really am that. As long as you're doing what you need to do, you're building your skills, opportunities will come and find you straight up.
Okay. You can go ahead to the next question, Jay.
So you one of the things you said was the standard, and that's another big thing that we've been talking about recently. So I wanted to ask you, it goes back to what we sort of discussed earlier, on setting standards and expectations. I mean, we've touched on structure and everything like that, but the standards you set were, as an athlete, the standards you set are a little bit more concrete, a little bit more easy to see. It's like, okay, I'm an athlete. I want this amount of points, or we've won this number of games, or we've achieved, my stats are X, Y, and Z. These are concrete things that you can see. But how have what is your current means of setting standards for yourself, and how has it changed from when you were an athlete?
I think for myself is the first thing is understanding that each day I wake up, and this is the athlete, it's an opportunity to get better, right? So there's really no ceiling on me contemplating, exploring how I want to improve my life, right? I think that's really important. There's times where I'm consuming a lot of information, just trying to learn new things, but there's also times where I'm resting and being present and being still. That has been a really strong practice recently with me, just mindfulness. And it's really helped me to move into maximizing every moment possible and being more present than being more future minded or absent minded. And when I say absent minded, I mean like more focused on what's missing than what's already there. Right. So that's a different take on absent minded. Right. So I'm all like people who focus on what I don't have versus focusing on what I do have. Right. That's one. My spirituality, I'm a Christian. So that is at the foundation. I would say over the past 10 years, that's really been the standard. Love the Lord my God with all my heart, all my mind, all my soul, my being, and love each other as I love myself. That has been like my foundation in how I treat people and how I move. So like spiritually, I'm checking in with the Holy Spirit and I'm engaging in what God wants me to do. And then when I engage people, I'm trying to engage them with my best intent and love them. The other component is wisdom. I can't love everybody because everybody doesn't deserve my love, right? Everybody can't handle my love. So I'm wise in my spheres of circles because I think our connections and our relationships are an important part of who we are. So my core, which is my wife and my son, they're standards, right? The standards are we communicate with love and healthy, right? My wife and I, my partner, we just connect. And I can't, we've known each other 20 years. We've been married 7 years now. There's just a natural connection, but I don't take it for granted. Right. So we communicate, we check in, we spend time with each other. We do all the things you need to do in a relationship. With my son, it's about developing. Got to develop him. He's 11 years old. He wants to be this athlete. And I'm like, all right, cool. But I want you to develop your whole self. I'm not going to be the parent. This is controversial. I'm not going to be the parent. Well, I just want you to focus on your grades. No, I want you to focus on your grades. I want you to focus on your athletic ability. And I want you to focus on being a good person. Right. I want to develop your character because as adults, what do we do the most? We work and we manage relationships and we operate in the world. So I want my son to be able to manage healthy relationships, want him to understand who he is in a relationship so he doesn't have to go through some negative things that I went through in previous relationships, right? Yeah. We don't think about that character development piece when we come to our kids. We just think about you go to school and you do what I say, the discipline, and right? That's the only thing. We got to develop our kids. Yeah. So that's a part of my standards, is really trying to develop him as a person in helping him to be reflective on who he is, how he is with his friends. We had a conversation a week ago. And I was like, yeah, so what do you like about yourself? He was like, oh, I like that I'm getting faster. I said, no, what do you like about yourself as a person? And then he reflected and he was like, I like how I'm able to comfort my friends when they feel bad. 11 years old, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Because that's an adult thing, right? That's a big deal. And I didn't put that in him, but but I'm asking the kind of questions that makes my son reflect on those things. And so I think that's when you come to standards, that's it. And then honestly, just continue to be the best person that I can be. I know it sounds very generic, but important.
That's very important.
Sometimes at it, and sometimes when it's in its basic form, that's the best. So I have 2 follow-up questions, and I know we're coming up on time, so if it's something we table for later, that's fine too. But the first question I had was as somebody who is spiritual, who is a Christian, how do you balance the for lack of a better term, the logic versus the faith aspects of who you are?
So I would say because I think that's an awesome way to answer. That's an awesome way to ask a question. So you have your human side, spiritually, you would say is your flesh, right? Your flesh, which is absent of the spiritual, right? So your physiological makeup, your brain, you kind of like, your emotions and all of those things, like that side where if you're just led by that, you're trying to string together everything that feels good and only want to do things that feel good, and don't matter what feel good looks like. It could be sexual, it could be drugs, it could be spending money, it could be recognition, it could be fame, like those things, feel attention, right? Accomplishments, because that's another component of it too. Some people are addicted to accomplishment and recognition, right? So all of those things that feel good, I just want to operate what feels good, and I don't want to deal with what doesn't feel good. That's the flesh side, right? The spiritual side says to me, it's like all those things come in balance, right? So like the idea that I want to experience those things that feel good, but I don't want to depend on those things that feel good. I personally operate in the middle. I operate with balance. Balance is important to me. It's one of the things that if I'm doing something, whatever it might be, I don't want to feel too high because I got to come back to the middle, because every moment I can't live on this high all the time. It's not real. It's life ain't like that. And I also don't want to live in this space of being low all the time, being depressed, right? Or being sad, not being fulfilled, being unmotivated. That's living in that space. So my spiritual life helps me to balance that. And it helps me to come back to what's the most important thing, which is, loving God and loving others. So as long as I'm operating in that, the other things will come, good times will come, success will come, but success won't be the main thing that I'm chasing after.
Okay.
Right. And I think that's how you really balance it. The logic piece is the idea that I want to operate within balance of my life, where I don't feel like there's lacking. I know there's improvement or opportunity to add more, but there's nothing lacking, right? Because when I'm operating from a lacking space, then I'm only going to chase what's lacking, and I'm not going to recognize what I already have.
Yeah.
And
that's a great point. That's a very great point.
And the second question I had was, well, I wouldn't even say it's a question, but it's more of a comment, and something I'm interested in you speaking a little bit more to is, you said about, you talked to your son about developing into a full human being, and not just the the worker that the world tells most folks that they need to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of, you've touched on it a little bit, but honestly, I kind of want, if and this might be something you do on your own, as somebody who is interested in developing people, like a conversation or a series of conversations with you about the things that you are actually implementing in your child to develop him into that fully formed human being. Because there are most of us, like me, like you, for my parents, it was, yes, we expect you to go to school and get your grades and don't really worry about anything else. But they were also religious, so they did add that piece of, but we also expect you to go to church. And in church is where I found that, okay, I'm supposed to develop into a full human being, not just the worker. So I mean, just, even if it's just a wrap up, just talk to us a little bit about that, and then we can wrap things up.
Yeah, no, that's such a great point. Because like biblically speaking, and I could probably assume from different religions that there's components and there's instructions to tell you how to be, right? There's that in like how to be according to the practices within that religion, right? So that's the piece where like you said, if you go to church and you're paying attention, because as a kid, I ain't paying attention. Like, you're trying to get out of there, right? Right. So some things seep in, and some things are kind of like, they might miss. So it's like, if the component of like spirituality and just it's there, then what are you elevating at home, right? So the practices and the character development, you got to be more specific, because it's like, if you, again, as a parent and as a parent of a Black child, and I think this is important, if we're only developing the mindset of go to school and you stay out of trouble, right? Okay, so I go to school, I stay out of trouble, right? But I still don't know how to manage relationships. I still don't have a good core of who I am and how to feel good about myself, right? If I don't feel good about myself because I'm outside looking at what my friends have. And it's because this was me. This was me like in Newark. I'll tell you. So the one thing I would say my mom did when started school year, I always got a brand new pair of J's from the start of school year, right? And everything in me was wrapped up in those J's when I started the school year. I'm talking about middle school. Like I was identified by those sneakers. Like it was like my first, and you only get one pair of sneakers for the year, so you better take care of them. And I was obsessed with making sure my sneakers were clean, obsessed with making sure, because back then in Newark, if you was sleeping, you get your sneakers taken. You get snuck up on, they take your sneakers off. So I had to like be on guard. I used to have my boys watch my back. Like everything was wrapped up in it because I got recognitions from those sneakers, from those shoes on my feet. I said, okay, people like my shoes, people like me. People like my shoes, people like me. That was my programming. So if I have good, clean sneakers on, people are going to like me. Girls are going to like me, right? My sneakers look good. My clothes look good. So people are going to pay me attention. What's that messaging develop into as an adult? You think about it. When you think about that type of messaging, what does it develop into? It develops into somebody who only gets validation from what other people say, confirm about them, right? So if I don't have internal validation, then I'm always going to be looking for external validation. And I think that's important. Like one of the things with my son is like, I was talking about this the other day on another podcast, that when he was like 5 or 6, and don't get me wrong, I'd say these things to say that I'm not perfect. I'm just trying, right? I'm trying to do things different than what I experienced, because I know what I experienced wasn't enough in my development, and I had to catch up by myself later. I don't want him to have to do that if he don't got to. So one of the things that I do with him is just, when he was really young, I would have this chant. His name is Quentin. So it would say, I'm Quentin Massoquoi. So knowing who you are, knowing your name, right? And I am a champion. I'm Quentin Massaquoi, I'm a champion. That was our chant in the car. That's when we would talk in the car. When I go pick him up, we would talk. Quentin Massaquoi, I'm a champion. And so that set the foundation for him being confident in who he was, because of who he is, right? His name is strong, and he's a winner at life. He ain't do nothing yet. He ain't accomplished nothing, but he's solid in that he is a positive, self-reflective self, right? He has a positive sense of self. That's at the foundation. Now, when we want to add more to it, we can add more, right? It's things you want to do. You want to be an athlete. You want to be a scientist. You want to, relationship. We can add more, but that foundation is crucial, right? Because to me, and this is my philosophy, he doesn't have to get external validation. He don't got to go somewhere to get something put into him, because it's already there. Right. And it could change. He could change. It could be things that he doesn't feel good about. He could be insecure throughout life. But that's where it's my job to come in and check in and make sure those areas are good. And if it's something he wants to do to get better, that I'm helping him, that I'm guiding him. I think for me, that's it. And it could look different for everybody. But for me, and it's a reflection of like not having self-confidence in myself as a kid, I want to make sure my son has a lot of confidence in himself, and he can build from there.
That's a great point. Great point. And I'll just add a kind of ending point. And it made me think, being a potential father, but also growing up to where, my dad used to always tell me, I'm just trying to teach you so you don't make the same mistakes that I made. Right. And I also, kind of take that to this podcast and try to let our audience know, like, don't make the same mistakes we've made, right? But really, it's a sitting down, having that chat to where, don't make the same mistakes I made, but how can we instill that knowledge, that preparation, so you don't encounter those mistakes, right? And that's kind of what we're doing, to where it's like, how can we really incorporate to say, how can we build your character?
Yeah.
Right. You as a person, right? Who are you? Who you want to be? How are you treating others? And also, it's maybe a little controversial, but how do others view you that you encounter? Right. What are people saying about you that, you're in their close circle? Because you can say one thing, but people can say, you know, you're fake, you're
Mm-hmm.
this, you know, he's not the person he says he is. You know what I mean? And that sometimes can be displayed as like fake or facade. So it's very important. And I like the fact that you brought up like how you treat others is very important, because
Yeah.
how those people perceive you is even more paramount, because those will be the people that say, oh yeah, that he's true to what he's saying, he's true to what he's doing, you know, he's relatable, you know what I mean? So I feel like it's very important. That's the next step to where we're teaching people, and also teaching, you know, me becoming a potential father, like, man, yeah, because I was going to go into fatherhood like, man, you know, don't do the same mistakes I did, but really instilling in my child, son or daughter, right, developing who you want to be and developing how you're going to treat others, right? Because you're right, you said it before, not everybody deserves love, but if you give love, that person can never say that, you know, the initial point, you know, this person is fake, they didn't give me any love at all, because we're very quick to judge people, but it's
Yeah.
how people perceive you initially is
Yeah.
kind of my ending points on that, right?
Yeah, I want to add to it. I think,
Okay.
even more so is just how does somebody experience me, right? So when
Yeah.
somebody engages me, is the experience going to be different here than another setting? And I can wholeheartedly say that it's going to be the same everywhere, right?
Good
I'll
point.
show
Good point.
up the same way, and it's a lot to do. It's a lot of work to take to get there, and I haven't arrived. You know what I mean? I don't got the blueprint, but I came to some point in my life where I was done trying to fit in.
Yeah.
That's what we do. That's where
Yeah.
fakeness comes from. It's like
Yeah.
customizing to fit that scenario. I
Yeah.
don't do that no more. I'm
Yeah.
showing up, and somebody's gonna experience me the same way, no matter where they are. There's
Yep.
certain components they're gonna say, Tim does this, Tim does that, Tim's silly, Tim everywhere. Because
Yeah.
that's just who I am. Tim is quiet. See, that's it.
Yeah.
So I think that's important, that those are the type of things that you instill in our kids, because that comes from a level of being comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah. So we're gonna go right into our wrap it up session. That's where we give our guests 3 to 5 minutes to kind of let the audience know, you know, from your perspective, give them gems.
Yeah.
So Mr. Tim, man, you've got the floor, sir.
Yeah, first of all, let me thank you both for allowing me to talk today. Great conversation, great questions, and as I'm reflecting on it, it feels like it comes from a place of just character development, reflection, and just a blueprint for a plan, right? A blueprint for a plan to put together for people to have the best life they could have, right? And a part of that, I think it's a balance. So there's 8 dimensions of wellness. And the domains are social, emotional, occupational, intellectual, environmental, finance, and physical, and spiritual. So like when we think about those dimensions of wellness, I think it's important that we start to really bring that structure to our lives, to where we have those dimensions and we're looking at those dimensions. Sometimes they overlap. At the same time, we can address these different dimensions of who we are, as far as our emotional and our mental well-being and our whole well-being. We can address them intentionally and individually. And it's important that we do that, because again, a lot of times we operate from a space of lacking. And I would encourage our guests to operate from a space of what's already there, right? So we move to what's there. We understand, we acknowledge what's there. And if we want to add more, we can add more. If the things we want to change, we want to take off, we can. We're not stuck in any type of behavior if we're paying attention to it, and if we have a plan to replace it. Behavior change is awareness, removing, and replacing, right? So there's things I'm doing in my life where they're detrimental to me. I have to start awareness of what they are. Then I have to start doing things to remove it, but I have to replace it, because if I don't replace it, I'm going to go back to my default, right? And your default mode of operating are things that are stuck. We talk about the brain stuck in the hippocampus, just emotion memory and memory. So when I don't have new memories, when I don't have a new way of operating as far as like automatic responses, I'm just going to go to that default if that default is unhealthy. So I want to encourage us to really start to reflect on where we are, who we are, and again, not from a space of lacking, but from a more so where is an opportunity for me to grow, right? Not what I don't have, but where can I grow, and what do I already do have? What am I really good at? What kind of character I already have as a person? So that's all I want to just really talk about. Just stress to us that we always have an opportunity to get better, and our get better doesn't have to be dependent on somebody else's circumstance or situation. It's all about being the best that we can possibly be and maximizing our own potential.
Yeah. Man, we really appreciate you taking the time with us, Tim, man. As you guys know, he's, therapist, mentor, host of the Mind Your Mental podcast with his co-host, Ma Davis, clinical director of the Ladipo group, and also former NFL player for the Bills, Bucks, and Dolphins. Really appreciate you taking the time with us. Make sure you guys follow him on his Instagram at the Ladipo group on Instagram. Make sure you guys, great content on his podcast, the Mind Your Mental podcast. Also, make sure you follow us on YouTube, Instagram, like, share, subscribe this video here. Let us know what you guys think. Just developing a lot of the character. Are you going through this right now? A lot of things, developing that discipline, developing these life choices. As we spoke about earlier, just continuing when one thing, as Mr. Tim, stop playing football, just being able to develop that growth mindset and that growth motivation, developing structure, and all about, developing if you're a parent, you know what I mean? Reevaluating how you're developing our next generation of children, right? Just building a lot of that characters within our children as well as yourself. It's never too late to change. It's never too late to pivot. It's never too late to change course, as we've talked about, right? A lot of times we get stuck and we feel like the world is over. That's not the case, just continuing to fill your glass each day, right? So make sure you guys like, share, subscribe. Definitely engage, definitely comment what you guys think. Definitely let us know, are you on this journey right now? Make sure you guys follow us, follow the Ladipo group, follow J Echo. We really appreciate, taking the time with us today, Tim, man. And I'm Philosophical for the Let's Rap podcast. We're out, y'all.
I'm J Echo. Take it easy.
Peace, y'all.
Man, appreciate you guys having me. Shout out to y'all, man. And I'm happy to be here, man.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here, man. You guys are doing amazing things.
It's good, man. We doing good. I see you guys looking great.
Well, I appreciate y'all for having me out, taking y'all time, and promoting positive Black image.